Please listen carefully.
Hello, universe. Welcome to the Optimist Daily Update. I'm Summers McKay.
And I'm Christy Jansen, and we're part of the team behind the Optimist Daily, making solutions the news. We bring you reader-funded solutions news every day in order to change the tenor of news media, social media, and the direction of your days to help make them focused on solutions.
7 days a week, we publish positive news stories written by award-winning journalists and delivered online to your inbox and through our social channels. And also, we are sharing these solutions in a commute-worthy, walk-worthy, home office-worthy, TGIF-worthy podcast. Today is, in fact, Friday, the 9th of April, 2021. Good morning, Christy. How are you today, my friend?
I'm wonderful, Summers, and I'm just thrilled about our show today.
It's a pretty thrilling show. I'm pretty thrilled too.
I don't really have that much to talk about with myself because other than continuing to finish this cleanse, and I've been now turning that cleaning up, the spring cleaning, to my house, and I'm feeling excited. I'm thrilled that we have some guests on.
One last quick update on your cleanse. I know you're ready to get to the guests, and the guests are amazing. But I want to ask, is today the last day of lemon garlic juice?
Yes, thank goodness.
Okay, and so you had your last cup and you feel cleansed and you feel excited. Will you just tell our listeners what your t-shirt says this morning? Because it's perfect.
Yeah. My t-shirt says, I work out to burn off the crazy.
Yep.
That's my motto for the day.
So what I love about that, Christy, is that you've done this cleanse, you're feeling top notch. You're also recognizing that exercise has to come into play, and it's like you're operating on all cylinders. And guys, as Christy's partner, I have to tell you, it's so exciting to have her back. Mm-hmm. So if you are like me and you have a partner who is maybe like, I don't know, not feeling super awesome, tell them to go drink garlic lemon water in the morning, among other things.
But a little more than that, but yeah.
Anyway, congratulations. Well done on the cleanse. And we're all very proud of you. And we are excited for what we're about to talk about today on today's Optimist Daily Update. So do you want to cue it up? Who do we have today?
Let us cue it up. So we have a couple of longtime optimists who reached out to us with a project they're working on. And when I started reading about them, I was like, oh my goodness, we have to get these people on the pod because they're so fascinating. It's Jason Lewis and his wife, Tammy Stevens. And Jason, he was actually the first person to complete a human-powered circumnavigation of the globe, which means that he, in a paddle boat, went across the Pacific Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean. And I, as a kid, did a crossing of both of those oceans when my sailing family did a circumnavigation. And I know those are really big bodies of water. So I was like, first, my jaw dropped when I read about that. But he's been committed his entire adult life to a low carbon lifestyle, exploring sustainable living solutions. And then somewhere along the way, he met Tammy, who was a former actress, but then got really active in animal rescue. She founded the Lazarus Fund, which is an animal rescue organization in Colorado after hearing about a shelter dog that had been euthanized, but then woke up. And she met Jason somewhere along the way and has been running after him ever since. That's how she described it. But there's such interesting people who are working on some really amazing solutions-oriented projects to bring change in a positive way. And so we just wanted to invite them on the show. And particularly, they're interested in the ocean, in ocean plants. We have a view coming out this weekend about sea plants, about kelp and seagrass, and they have been working on those questions for quite a long time. So welcome, Jason and Tammy, to the Optimist Daily Update.
Hi, good to be here.
Hi, great to have us. We really are looking forward to chatting with you too.
Now, to give our audience just a perspective, why don't you tell us both where you are in the world currently?
I'm in UK right now, myself.
All right.
And I'm in Colorado.
All right. So we are spanning the globe with our conversation today. Thank you guys so much for coming on. And Christy, you've got some questions queued up, so I'm going to let you lead, and I'm just going to listen and weigh in with interesting thoughts.
All right. Well, first of all, both of you are fascinating people, and I'd love to hear just a quick little summary of each of your story. Jason, why don't we start with you telling us a little bit about some of your expeditions and what brought you along this path to where you are now?
So thanks so much for that question. So I at college, I studied geography and biology, and I've always been interested, I think, since the late 80s in the natural world and human societies, and how human societies can only thrive with a healthy natural world. And so that was the bridge between geography and biology. And that led to a friend of mine and myself setting out on a human-powered circumnavigation. 94, we built a boat to cross the oceans. The idea was to do it all by zero carbon human travel. So we didn't use motors or the power of the wind. We would ride bikes, walk, rollerblade over land, use the pedal boat across the oceans, kayak between islands, and swim sometimes the rivers. And really, this was back in the early 90s. It was already obvious that climate change, climate breakdown was coming down the pike. And we wanted to demonstrate what was possible without burning fossil fuels. And the other reason why we wanted to do a human-powered circumnavigation was it was a powerful way to connect with indigenous cultures in remote parts of the world, the South Pacific Islands, for example, where people already were starting to feel the effects of climate change in the form of rising sea levels. We met people on low-lying coral atolls in the Republic of Kiribati, for example, and the Solomons, who were having to literally, they were losing their homes. We met people who fishermen who were unable to sustain themselves any longer because the plastics already building up in the oceans. And ironically, these are all problems that these people did not produce themselves. Plastics in the ocean, rising sea levels. So there's a sort of a moral dilemma here that I think we're just starting to really explore in the developed world, especially where we are producing all these problems. So we wanted to go and meet these people and tell their stories as well as to how they were being impacted by our actions in the developed world. So that was my human person. It took me 13 years, made it back to London. And then I wrote a book series. I met Tammy around that time when I was writing my book. And out of that book writing process, we really honed down what we're doing now, which is, again, using adventure as a way to engage people in discussions and conversations about sustainable living, and people that may not otherwise be that interested, but adventure is a very powerful way to engage people in a way sort of on the back end in these kind of sustainable discussions.
That really gets me, Jason. I love that story and how you put that and even bringing it back to the indigenous wisdom that you have encountered along the way, and the fact that it's those people who are least responsible for some of the maleffects that we're starting to experience that are experiencing the worst effects of those same problems. And then, so Tammy, let me invite you into the conversation. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your story and share how you're now engaged with this whole project of environmental storytelling with Jason?
Well, as you can well imagine, living with Jason would give anybody an inferiority complex, which is something that I want to challenge people to do, which is not to compare yourself to other people. When I first met him, I just was so in awe of this man that had gone around the planet that I almost started feeling small. And we've got to just play to our strengths. I was an actress. It just was something I always loved to do. I loved to act and to sing, mainly because you could see people carrying the weight of their burdens when they would come into the theater, and that they left, feeling lighter and feeling better. And I think the one common denominator that a lot of us have in society that we don't share with others can be depression, or just the weight of what's going on in our personal life, or the weight of the enormity of global warming and climate change. And so I've always, like I said, just wanted to lift people up. We had a death in the family, and so I had to move back to Colorado from California. And there wasn't any acting that I could do professionally in my little town, so I started an animal rescue. I don't know, it's just something about being there for the little guy, being a champion for the little guy. And I think that's why, the animal rescue. But then I actually met Jason, who was also kind of a little guy, because nobody wanted to sponsor this man on this journey, because quite frankly, sponsors don't want their clients to die. It's very bad press. And so, but afterwards, everyone was coming to him saying, "Oh, we knew you could do it. We knew you could do it." Well, he had been offered a $250,000 book advance for the rights to his story, and he was broke. 13 years going around the world, you don't make any income. But Jason has so much integrity that he turned that down. And at that point, he was actually living in his car. And I just thought, oh my God, here's this amazing person with this wonderful, positive story to tell. So that's when we teamed up to start Billy Fish Books. And we just published this trilogy ourselves. And it's done very well. It's won many awards. So I'm very, very proud of him. But in spite of our differences, the one thing that we do have in common is our love for the planet and our love for animals and our belief that just one person can make a difference. Not everyone is a Jason Lewis. Not everyone is a Summers or a Christy, but we can all do our part, and we should feel empowered by that. So that's basically where I'm at. Jason talked me into doing this journey with him on the water, and I've been scared to death ever since.
I'm curious to hear about that too, because I grew up sailing, and I think that's one of the things that drew me to Jason's story in particular. But he mentioned that you joined him on the most recent adventure on the sea, but it was your first time on the ocean. So do you want to just tell us a little bit about that experience?
Well, the ocean is full of water, therefore I do not like it.
Okay. Are you not a swimmer then?
I am not a swimmer. I cannot swim. I panic. I have a phobia of the water. Even when I take a shower, I have to keep a towel there to dry my eyes because I can't. I'm just thinking about it is raising my blood pressure.
I want our listeners to know that Tammy this morning, she has her cat with her, and so her cat was like on her lap, and I'm imagining you as like this cat. you're like your spirit animal's like a cat, and you don't want to get in the water.
Oh, it is so true. But again, I thought if I can do this, maybe it's just all about inspiration. I mean, we all have been there where we've watched a movie and, watching Rocky run up the steps, and I want to be that person for other people to face their fears, whether it may be getting out of an abusive relationship, especially women, and especially women my age. I'm almost 60, and I just want to inspire others to step out of whatever their comfort zone is in lieu of helping a worthy cause. And so that's what I've done. It's been quite scary, but the more I'm around the water, the more I'm a little bit more comfortable with it. I don't get in it, but I can be on it now, which is a big deal. And of course, it helps having Jason there because he's got so much experience. I could not be in better hands.
Jason, why don't you tell us a little about this latest journey where you took Tammy out into the sea? And what was the goal of that particular journey besides getting your wife a little bit wet?
To throw me off the boat.
The goal was to see if our marriage would actually last. Like if we can survive it like a week in my small pedal boat, then we know we're good for the long run.
I really, this is a testament to not only courage but to marriage right here. I'm very impressed, Tammy, with your choice to face your fears. My husband's an avid motorcyclist, and I'm just not there with him. So well done.
Well, we fight like cats. I mean, literally, we are both cats in that sense. On land, but it's weird when we're in a sort of more of a high pressure situation, we actually do pretty well. And so we thought, God, we're just going to kill each other on this boat. But we ended up actually doing really well. The idea was because I'm trying to think, historically expeditions tend to be a little bit centered around the individual. A lot of my peers in the adventure community, including myself, we're all, I think, probably innately insecure people looking to try and prove something, plant a flag, climb a mountain, put ourselves. I'm being a bit cynical here, but I've always thought,
no,
goodness.
Wait, no, you're not though, because I'm like you. When I climbed Kilimanjaro, I wanted to do it alone. That was a big part for me. That it was that I did it on my own, that individualistic nature of adventure. So you're absolutely right that you kind of turned this on its head and didn't make it about the individual.
Well, and that's the thing. If you're smart and you want to make a career out of doing expeditions, being a so-called adventurer, then the smart thing to do is to put yourself at the sort of first and foremost, create your personal brand. And at least in the UK, the adventure community is dominated by white middle class men with beards. Mm-hmm. And it's quite it's almost Victorian-esque. It's like, goodness, haven't we moved on from that in 2020? So, and where there are women in the adventure space, but not nearly enough. There aren't people of diversity, of color, and I, of course, am white, middle class, and I have a beard. But I've always strived to, I think, try and include people on my expeditions that are just not typical adventure style people.
There's something about adventure, though, that really brings you down to your human core. And if you can share that with another person, it has the opportunity to bring out the best of each of you.
Yeah. And that's what I get a real kick out of, is seeing somebody embark upon an expedition. It doesn't have to be around the world. It could be just even for a few weeks, cycling across their home state. Or I had, for example, 8 teenagers join me to cycle across the outback. And we had a big educational program rolling out through our nonprofit at that time. But it's just seeing people doing something that takes them out of their comfort zone, and they have to face their fears. And Tammy is the prime example, facing her fear of water last summer. And then at the other end, of course, they go through the trials. It's the classic kind of hero's journey in a way. They face obstacles, but they come out the other end, and they've become closer to their true selves. Perhaps it's really an internal journey more than an outer one, if you like.
Yeah, and also I want to pick up on what you were talking about expanding the definition of adventure. And why is it the exclusive purview of white men who've gone out into the world and always told from that perspective, when there's so many different perspectives to capture and to give a little diversity of what does it mean? What does an adventure mean? I mean, think of the people who are fleeing environmental destruction, deciding to move from or migrate from Central America right now, looking for a better home. That's an adventure. That's a tremendous adventure that's full of peril, and all just to try to have a better life.
You hit the nail on the head with that one. I think that's so important. What we classify as adventure and what gets the quote unquote press as adventure. For some people, it's just getting up out of bed when you have a major disability, or like you said, fleeing to a different country. That truly is adventure.
It doesn't get characterized as an adventure. That's they're refugees. And it's just interesting that I just like that you put that out, Jason. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, because I listen. I mean, we listen to radio. I mean, just hearing some of the stories, for example, like you said, of a farmer from Honduras who, they can no longer grow crops because of their area drying out, and they're trying to find a better life in the States. Or it might be, I mean, I heard a story the other day on the radio about a girl who left Eritrea in North Africa and trying to reach the UK here via Libya, crossing the Mediterranean on a rubber raft. I mean, just a story where both her parents were killed. She was only 12. She was held by some people in Tripoli in Libya for a year, used as a sex slave, crossed the Mediterranean, her raft sank. I mean, it makes the average adventure story, they just pale in comparison to the stories that these, to the trials that these people, and it's going on right now, and it's exacerbated by climate breakdown, these climate refugees, and it just makes Tammy and I feel so motivated to try to get out there and again use adventure, but to use it rather than the sustainability component or the environmental component being a sort of a tag on at the end, which is quite typical for people who do expeditions. It's really about them. It's about the mountain, and then they stick on a little bit we're trying to put sustainability as the centerpiece. So rather than going out there and discovering new continents or new products or planting a flag like adventurers would have done historically, what we're doing is using our journey, our zero carbon journeys, to go out there and find people who are solving sustainability issues at a grassroots level, and they're driving change from the bottom up. So that's why that's what we're using the adventure story for.
And that's a perfect invitation, because I really wanted to get you to start focusing on your current project. And I think you're currently focusing on whales and the progressive activities that are happening there with the Future Generations Act, which is now being enacted. I just want you to talk about that, about the seagrass, about the sewage pollution in the rivers in the UK, and the people you've been connecting with on the ground in the UK around these different projects.
Tammy?
Well, I think most importantly is that, we set out looking at corporations or businesses. And then we found along our journey that there are so many individuals that don't have any experience with a particular issue, but yet they're passionate about it. And they start with just one little action. And basically, that's our tagline: one person, one action. And I'll give just a quick example. We met a retired police officer who heard that the water companies were dumping untreated sewage into the local rivers in the UK. And, he thought to himself, well, that's got to be illegal. That can't be right. And he started out just writing a letter. And he found out that, yes, indeed, it was correct. And they were dumping millions of gallons of untreated sewage into his local river, which went into the Thames, which goes into the ocean. And so this one man, with just a passion to do something, has started a movement, and it has really snowballed. I think that's the most important thing and the most important message that we can send to people. And Jason, I'll let you give some examples of some people that we've spoken with, is that, just do something. It doesn't have to be a big thing, and you would be surprised at how it will begin to snowball, and you will make an enormous difference just by taking that first step.
I think so. The one big, I think, not issue, but conflict sometimes is people argue, well, is individual change in terms of our behaviors, in terms of the movements, is that really effective when what we need is systemic institutionalized change by governments and by big business? And I think, and I've learned so much just reading The Optimist Daily, just how it's really a multi-pronged approach. And yes, of course, we do need governments to legislate for a sustainable future, but also governments only change and do something about that, and big businesses will only change their corporate practices if individuals, we the consumers, demand it. And I think this is where Tammy's point about we can't, individuals, we can't wait for our governments and our business leaders to take the initiative, because business leaders are beholden to shareholders who maybe don't want them to do. I mean, these water companies, for example, in the UK, they're all owned by foreign corporations. They were privatized. The water companies were privatized 40 years ago with the idea that privatization would bring increased investment in infrastructure. Well, the reverse has happened. Surprise! It's all about the bottom line for shareholders, for dividends. And so the investment hasn't happened. As a result, when there are flooding events, and of course, flooding events are becoming more common with climate change, they are allowed by the regulator, the Environment Agency, the equivalent of the EPA here, to dump raw sewage into these waterways. But people like Ashley, who started the pressure group, now his local water company, the Thames Water, they're having to take notice because they don't like bad press. They don't like that squeaky wheel. And so they are starting to do something about this particular issue.
And so that's the importance of being a squeaky wheel. But also, I mean, in modern democracies, the whole idea is that the people hired our leaders. It's not the other way around, right? We have a say. That's the whole idea of a democracy. But it's collective action that, it's one person writing the letter and then telling his local community, his friends about that. They all come together. They get the right person in office. They make a stink about it. And then the Thames Water Department has to change their action.
Absolutely.
That's a great story. And why don't you tell us a little, I mean, I could talk with you guys probably for 4 hours to keep going. But you have some really precious films that I've been able to watch, which are on your YouTube channel. The other two programs that I did see that you've gotten involved with, located in Wales, are the Seagrass initiative there. And we've written about that on the Optimist Daily. And what's up with Seagrass? Why don't you tell us a little bit about that project as well?
Well, it's the superhero of the natural world. We all look at rainforests as being able to sequester carbon, but we've got this lovely little just piece of grass. It's just like grass that you would mow, but it's in the sea. And unfortunately, dredging and overfishing and poor water quality because of, sewage being dumped into the Thames and various things like that have caused seagrass to die back about 90%. And we were able to interview an amazing group. Jason, you want to tell them about our interview?
So yeah, it's a group of students actually who look to restore seagrass back to some of the waterways and inlets in the UK. Seagrass is, as Tammy mentioned, this amazing plant that can sequester carbon 30 times. You probably hear those birds behind me. I'm actually in a
The seabirds.
no, I'm in a tower. It sounds like a tower, and there are these jackdaws that are nesting in these boxes in the walls. It's very it's very medieval. So yeah, seagrass is just, in terms of ecosystem services, it ticks so many boxes. It sequesters carbon more effectively than tropical rainforests. It contributes to coastal defense in terms of storms, and it acts as a fish nursery, so it adds to biodiversity. So it's just this amazing plant that is completely innocuous looking. Yeah.
And the thing is, I mean, we've been focused on kelp, for example, which I think has a lot of the similar properties.
Yes.
And we've also written quite a bit about mangroves, which is also another shoring up of the landscape against tides and raising seawater and things like that. But seagrass you have that up in Wales in the UK. So it's in these very temperate areas, not in tropical areas, is what you're talking about.
Well, no, I think there are many species of. So I was just going to say there are many species of seagrass, and I know that there's a very successful restoration project down in Florida, where they have had great success reintroducing seagrass. But I think the species up here in these higher latitudes is a kind of more hardy, cooler water type. But basically, there are many initiatives around the world, but this is the first one of its kind in the UK that we filmed last summer.
Well, and I love the fact that this is a university that has put this together, and they have been using volunteers, from as young as 6 years old to 96 to stuff these little bags full of seagrass seeds. But once again, one of the things that Jason and I really want to stress, and why we love the Optimist Daily, is because it empowers the individual. We met a fellow in Wales that is just he's a plumber, but he loves to scuba dive. And he decided one day to just put up a SpongeBob poster. He made it. He stuck it up on a bulletin board that said, hey, if you want to help me clean Bikini Bottom, meet me at such and such a day. And so now he went down and pulled up all kinds of trash and debris from the ocean. But that has since then snowballed. And he now has a group called NARC, Neptune's Army of Rubbish Cleaners.
I love it.
I mean, just thousands and thousands of pounds. They've lifted cars out of the ocean, fences, tons of rope and line, and they free all of these animals that are stuck in traps in the ocean. And not only that, but he's now teaching other groups in different countries how to do that. And that's just a fellow that's using what he likes to do. So if you have a talent, chances are there is something you can do with that talent or with that hobby to put it into practice to do something for the planet.
That's one of the things at the Optimist Daily that we talk about all the time, is that we want you to be part of the solution, right? We want everyone to be part of the solution, changing the world for good. And if you look around your local communities, be empowered by Tammy and Jason's stories. The area that I've moved into, we actually are fighting a wastewater dumping situation into some of our local ponds right now, right here today. And, the neighborhood association has a Facebook group and a page, and they make it very easy for you to submit your opposition so that they can prevent it. And then in addition to preventing sort of negative things like wastewater dumping, I love that you guys have really pulled out some of the stories around active things you can do to then improve something that has been, affected in some negative way. So all of these stories that you're finding of these people who are coming up with ways of fixing things and improving things. I mean, I love the NARC story. That's just great. Christy, we need to cover NARC on Optimist Daily. That is
Tammy,
awesome.
Send us some press on them so we can add them.
I will. And he's a great character. He's so funny. But I've met a woman who is 98. She's housebound. She knits and she makes dog sweaters for the local animal shelter, and she makes caps for people that go out and they pick up trash early in the morning and it's cold. And so she just hands out these free caps. There are a lot of people that don't have time maybe they're just working full time, but they have money. And I can guarantee you all of these projects need money. So if you're busy, donate to one of these projects. And I know that you had interviewed a young woman who was, I think, a middle schooler and convinced her local school district to use electric buses. So
Yes.
everyone can help. Everyone can do something.
Yeah. And the thing is, when you get involved with one of these projects, it brings you closer to the other people who are also caring about it. And that's why I think, yes, it'd be great if our governments and our world leaders and our corporate leaders started doing positive things and cleaning up the biosphere. But when one person does it, it brings along their friend. And it is that grassroots kind of movement is so, it can be very powerful. And I think that's what really will make these shifts and make the changes. And when you get together with people who are working, you find new friends, you find new sisters and brothers and people who are, you become family almost.
And exponential growth. That's what it's all about.
Exponential growth. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, Summers, I guess.
Yeah.
This has been like an hour.
I know. It's one, as always, Christy and I just delight in talking to just such amazing people. But our listeners don't necessarily have hours to hear us ponder. So let's get to a couple brass tack questions that we regularly ask our guests on the Optimist Daily. Every day, guys, there's tons of great headlines that stand out, that inspire, that empower. Are there any stories that you've read on the Optimist Daily? You just mentioned the young woman who changed her school district to electric buses. Are there any stories that each of you individually have really stuck with, or that you've shared with other people from the Optimist Daily? What about the Optimist Daily keeps you optimistic?
If I could jump in, I mean, one of the stories that Tam and I were just talking about this other day, you've covered this in a few different cities, whole area of universal basic income.
Yep.
And I believe they've done some pilots in Stockton, California,
rolling it out in Oakland as well. Yeah.
In Oakland. Yep. I think, we were just talking about human psychology and how, I can't remember where the first pilot was, but the argument was, if you give people, this is so for those who aren't familiar, this is a program where you maybe take 500, 1,000 people in a particular country or a city, and you give them $500, $800, whatever it is, no strings attached, and no matter what their income is previously. And the idea being to then see what the people do with that money, how it affects their employment. If they're unemployed previously, is it better their chances to get employment? And the argument previously was, if you give people $500 free, they're just going to blow it. They're just going to spend it on, bad things, or
get a new TV or a new pair of shoes or drugs or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And that but what the research is showing is that actually people are very careful with their money, and they put it towards maybe paying down debt, or they put it towards life, insurance, or something for their family, for education, for their kids. And so the thing that Tammy and I were talking about was like, wow, that really tells you that I don't think any of these big problems like climate change, biodiversity loss, rising sea levels, plastics in the ocean, none of these problems can be fixed without also income equality. And it brings, we were talking about how not only gender equality, but money is the disparity right now in terms of the haves and the have-nots, especially in the States, where you have some incredible portion of the wealth controlled and in the hands of just a very small number of people. Unless that somehow changes with schemes like universal basic income, these other big problems I don't think can be solved, or they can only be solved to a certain extent. And so that was one story that you guys have covered that has really stood out for me.
Well, and I think obviously the young woman who got her school district to change to electric buses, I like that because it empowers young people who have been left with this horrible situation we've put them in. But one thing I really do like that you focus on sometimes is the alternative to meat and to consuming animals to help the environment. And Jason and I are both vegan. And of course, we're big animal lovers. And one thing I would challenge people to do, that if you do nothing else, if you could just try to eliminate or really reduce the amount of animal products, meat, dairy, fish that you consume, you will make such an enormous impact for the planet and for the lives of the animals that you will save. I think to me, that's one of the most empowering things that we can do. And I do appreciate that you focus on that.
It's so funny that you say that. And at the Optimist Daily, we get so much feedback from our readers, and this is exactly what we want. We do at the Optimist Daily regularly cover meat alternatives, and that in its own right can be very controversial. We actually received a relatively frustrated message this morning from a person who was very anti-manufactured meat. So it is very interesting, and I love that you bring that up, because we are big fans of eating less meat at the Optimist Daily and know that that is a really good thing for our society.
I don't think we were talking about my cleanse. One of the things that I'm doing is being completely vegan right now. And actually, I'm going to continue that on because I feel better right now on a physical level, but I think it's morally better. I want to do my part in lowering my personal footprint and whatever I can do. And so I like that you guys are emphasizing that. I think that's a really good idea.
It's a biggie. Not everybody can bike to work, and some cities don't have mass transit. But by stopping meat consumption, dairy consumption, it will make an enormous impact not only on your health, you will be healthier, the planet is healthier, there's less abuse, neglect, and suffering on the animals' part. And there's a big disconnect. It used to be you would kill a deer and eat it, but now it's wrapped in a nice little package, and it's easy to disconnect with all of the water, all of the suffering, everything that's happened. And so, just challenge. We're not preaching, just, everyone has their own choices, but I would encourage everyone to consume less. I promise you'll feel better. Or, go to a stockyard and get an idea of what really happened, that kind of thing, and make an educated decision for yourself.
As we like to say, solutions aren't siloed, and it's a yes and kind of opportunity. What can each of us do, but also how can we get involved? And it's not going to be the same answers. One woman's knitting the hats for the people who are out there cleaning up the beach, right? Not everybody can do the same things, but we all have our own special talents. So before we leave you guys, Jason, Tammy, what's your final thought? Beyond the Optimist Daily, what is making you optimistic about the world?
I feel that there is an inherent belief in all the people that I have met in my life. In every country that I've visited, and I've been very lucky and fortunate to have traveled as much as I have. And the beauty of human power is it keeps you at a ground level where you meet the people in the villages, and you're not just a walking dollar, which is what you can be portrayed as sometimes if you're a tourist. But the regular people that I've met in villages, in countries that are different religions, perhaps different cultural differences, underneath all those differences, be it color of skin, be it religion, be it social differences, class differences, or whatever, everybody wants the same thing. And I've met people, very humble people in Indonesia, in Sudan, in Africa, in the heights of the Himalayas. And underneath all of that, we all want the same thing. We all want to be able to live peacefully. We want enough food for our family. We want our kids to be educated. And actually, we don't need that much. We don't need that much. And there's more than enough to go around, be it food or be it just enough for us to get by. So I guess my takeaway from my journeys is that if we can just focus on living more simply, and the happiest people that I've met on my travels very often have the least, they live the most simply. That is something that I think if we can all somehow focus on reducing and living more simply, that is going to enable us all to move forward and inherit, and for our children and their children to inherit a habitable world in 100 and 150 years time from now. So I just kind of try and focus on that.
I think for me, it's people that we meet along the way that are facing their fears, facing their challenges. But like Jason said, we all are the same. We're just the same. So if we can focus like the Optimist Daily does on what's positive out there, I think we will all just draw inspiration from one another and use that inspiration as fuel to keep getting up in the morning, in spite of the fact that some things can seem depressing. And I would challenge people, don't listen to the horrible news that you hear. Get out and meet people, because you will find that they are absolutely lovely and they think a lot like you. and want to make change like you do. And I really hope that your listeners will get in contact with us, because we would love to hear their stories, because they inspire us. We learn much more from others, I'm sure, than they could learn from us. So I would just invite anyone to follow along on our journey and, give us your insight.
Well, we'll certainly include it in this show notes, but where can people find you guys, and how can people follow your journey?
So you can plug in hashtag GB360 is one way to find us. Our YouTube channel, I don't even know what the tagline is, but it's Jason Lewis and Tammy Stevens YouTube. If you do a search, that should find our YouTube channel. But we're on Facebook. I think if you plug in Tammy Stevens actress and Jason Lewis adventure, you should be able to find us somewhere.
That's beautiful. And I love that each of you, when you did your summary, talked about life at the human scale. And that's something, Jason, you walking and riding a bike and paddling around the world, you meet people in a different kind of way than if you're flying. And then Tammy talking about facing your fear and just getting up and doing something. I can so identify with that. I love this conversation, you guys. Summers, did you?
As always, you guys, this was a brilliant conversation. Thank you guys so much for coming on to the Optimist Daily Update. I'm going to bring it home because otherwise Christy will keep talking for hours.
Yeah.
So thank you everyone for listening to the Optimist Daily Update. We promise to continue to share positive solution-based stories with ideas on how you can participate in this changing world and ensure it is changed for the good. We promise to cover the current events with accuracy, legitimate sources, and offer you the information needed most to chart new paths for all of us.
And if you aren't already, please consider becoming an emissary on theoptimistdaily.com. And for just $5 a month, you can help support this reader-funded independent journalism. We are totally supported by our readers right now, so thank you so much, everybody who is already an emissary. But we need more of you, and you can be a part of that solution-changing consciousness that addresses our world's biggest challenges with a problem-solving mindset. Please help us keep the Optimist Daily free for everyone who needs it, supported by those of us who can. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Tammy. Summers, this has been a great day. I'm thrilled, and I hope everybody has a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Great fun.